How's it going, guys? Back with another one. Today we're going to be working on my Lexus LS400. It's a 1998, and brake master cylinder went out, so we're going to be doing that today. So basically we're doing the brake master cylinder because I'm getting a sinking pedal feeling. So I go to get on the brakes and the car is stopping, but the longer I keep my foot down, the further it slowly slides down to the floor, and eventually I lose brake pressure. That is a very strong indicator that it is a brake master cylinder failure. So as you can see, I have already removed all the plastics, just makes it easier and we can kind of see what's going on. Even though they weren't really necessary, there was a line that comes over to this module over here, so I was just kind of inspecting everything. Normally I like to stick with just OEM parts on this, keep it as close as I can to the factory with the exception of like tires and brake pads. But because there are still parts shortages, it's extremely hard to find the brake master cylinder replacement, and there's also a rebuild kit you can get from the factory, but even that was back ordered. So I went ahead and bought a Duralast remanufactured brake master cylinder, and I looked at it in the store and it looked to be correct, but the first thing I like to do before we really get started is go ahead and take our part out and compare it next to the one that we're replacing. Okay, so if we compare the two here, it does appear to be roughly the same shape. We've got a attachment point here for the reservoir as well as here. There is a screw location here to hold the reservoir down. That looks correct. The bolt pattern appears to be correct. Everything appears to match. So as you see here, the fluid level is good, but the color is really, really dark. It should be a clear fluid with just a small amount of yellow-orange tint and hue to it, but it should be pretty much clear. As you can see, that's really dark. All right, so a couple of things to keep in mind. Not only is brake fluid just kind of greasy and nasty and difficult to clean up effectively off of the surface, but it also eats paint. So we definitely don't want a whole lot of it spilling all over the place, down the firewall, on the frame rail, all that kind of stuff, and eating the paint. Let's get some rags in there. I have this nice little green funnel here that happens to fit perfectly over a water bottle. So I'm going to attempt to see if we can't stick this down in here. Let the bottle crumble a little bit, that's fine. Go ahead and start with removing our clip here, just to get it out of the way. Your sensor stays in there. We are reusing this reservoir, so we'll just tuck that out of the way for now. Boom. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna take it off this side because that's metal and I'm probably less likely to break it. Which means we're gonna move our funnel temporarily. Trick with these is just take your time and slightly twist back and forth and pull as you twist. Yep, we got brake fluid. And we drain the reservoir, so that's good. Okay, our funnel's under both ends, so we're good for now. Then what I'm gonna do So I'm going to take off this screw on this side so we can get the reservoir loose. You can see it was really just dirty fluid. Okay, so there's a Phillips screwdriver, or screw. Which is not wanting to come off. That's fun. Sometimes you get a little extra leverage. You can use a pair of channel locks or a wrench on your screwdriver. Oh yeah, and I got it. So that's a little trick for you if you didn't know that. That way it's much easier to keep pressure pushing in towards the screw, as well as getting a lot more leverage. It'll stop you from stripping out screws. Okay, now we don't want to lose this, so put this one somewhere special. Okay, so I drained, but then I realized that that's just this back compartment. So it only drains halfway, except for in this back compartment. So I think I'm actually gonna put that little screw in and keep the reservoir on it. And then when we crack our lines off, we're gonna get a little bit of residual, but we're gonna try to just take it out as a unit now that it's got less fluid. And then hopefully I don't leak it everywhere. And then we'll pull the reservoir off and drain it outside the car. I think that's gonna be a better play. So I'm learning. The little trick I showed you works, but I think I would keep the screw in until later. We're just gonna get that, a handful of threads on there, so it's not super tight, but it won't come out and it'll keep the reservoir from popping off. Because otherwise we'll have all this draining all over the car and that'll make a huge mess. Okay, so I think the next step is we're gonna get this line and this line disconnected and try to capture as much fluid as we can with rags and other, bottles and stuff. Capture as much of that as we can, get those loose and separated, and then we just have to get the bolt down there and the bolt down here loose, and the whole thing should come out. Do yourselves a favor if you're working on brakes and use a line wrench. Go out and get yourself a cheap set of line wrenches, or at least the sizes that are common on your car. So as you can see, the normal box wrench is just square, and that's designed to go on like bolts. The line wrench is a little bit more closed, and it has basically a tooth on each side. And these are literally what they mean. You go over and now you have as much connecting points as possible, and it'll really stop you from stripping these bolts. Because let's face it, you're gonna use one of these, you're gonna crank on it, they're gonna be tight, it's gonna wiggle just a little bit, and then you're gonna round the bolt. Get some fluid out of this. I'm going to try to reposition this funnel here. Those rags. pretty good. Okay, and we'll go get these two 12mm bolts loose. Now we're going to start carefully removing the catch bottle of all that old, nasty, dirty fluid. And get our oily rags out of here. Come in with some fresh ones and wipe up as much as we can, as quick as we can. Especially where it's on the paint. All right, so now we got our master cylinder out here. Go ahead and take that screw out that we loosened earlier. Set that aside. Okay, and we have one seal on the master here, or the reservoir here. Let's try to get that in a situation there where it won't spill too much. And then we're going to clear this out. Okay, looks to be the same. Just have to use one aside. And I'm gonna see how much I can clean this bottle up. Okay, so I got it decently clean. I just used some Dawn dish soap and some water and shook it around and drained it. Came out pretty good. Make sure you get it completely dry so we don't interrupt any water in the system. To help you out, you can actually get this little screen out by, you have to turn it left, but like pick it up. So it's like you can use 2 fingers and kind of pull up and twist it out. But it does come out, which will help you spray out the float areas and get all the dirt out of there, because we don't want to reintroduce dirt once we put fresh fluid in there. So there's like these 2 little wings, and if you just slowly tighten it, they'll fall down to the next level, and there's like 3 levels. And then eventually it'll stop. And we'll just go ahead. We have the fresh seals that are already on the master cylinder. So we'll go ahead and push the reservoir back on. And then I like actually reusing Toyota hardware, so I went ahead and cleaned up the bolt, and I'm gonna go ahead and lock the reservoir down to the master cylinder. And then what we have to do is bench bleed it, put new fluid in it, and essentially let fluid come out of the holes, and then give it a few pumps and make sure that we push all the air out of the master cylinder. And then we'll plug the holes with these plugs here, and that'll minimize how much air we introduce into the system when we bleed the rest of the car. I also went ahead and cleaned up the cap real good too. And I'm gonna carefully reinstall the gasket. So this is the color that brake fluid really should be. It's a little bit of a yellow tint to it, but really clear. This is the color of the brake fluid that we got out of the reservoir. Yuck. Okay, so now we're going to bench bleed. For this project, I'm going to use Valvoline DOT4 synthetic brake fluid. It's just got a little bit of a higher boiling point since I am in a very hot climate and I do highway driving. It'll help from cooking the brake fluid like it looked like it was in the old reservoir. Always try to use fresh fluid from a sealed bottle, because if you leave it unsealed, it will absorb moisture, and that moisture is not good for the brake system. So try not to use fluid that's been open for very long. Basically open it when you need it. Okay, and then just use your fingers to push the master just a little bit, and just give it a couple light little pumps. Not fast, otherwise you'll spray it everywhere. But you basically want it to do this until you stop seeing bubbles. Make sure you keep topping off fluid so you don't suck any new air into the system. Okay, that was a really good, clean stream of fluid. I'll try it one more time. Still a little bit of air in there. Okay, now, when you start getting clear streams of fluid, go ahead and put the plugs in. This will just help minimize how much air you introduce into the system. Take out of our vise, wipe it down. And you want to make sure that you always keep the fluid on the bottom so don't tip it. But let's get it to the car. All right, now as I bring the part in, I'm gonna take a dab of multi-purpose grease, put it in the cylinder there, as well as on the post here from the booster, just so there's no binding or anything there. And we're gonna work it in place. And then once we get it close, we're gonna undo this bottom plug, push it onto the brake line. So we'll get it. So it's pretty much in place, and then we're going to try to get this one done as fast as possible as well. All right. And now that we're not leaking fluid anymore, take a fresh rag and clean it all up. So we'll take our trusty line wrench here. Make sure you don't cross thread it. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and use a wrench here just to get these started. Okay. Remember, don't try to force it with just a normal box wrench, or open-ended wrench. So that's snug. And come get your line wrench. Give both of them a good tightening up. And again, just make sure that take a wet, clean rag and wipe up any fluid that's now anywhere in the car. And then we're going to go ahead and take our brake line here, or our line here, rubber hose line. Stick this on your hose here and just give her a twist back and forth until she's in position. Grab a hold of our clamp. Get her back in the spot. Okay. Now we're going to take our two 12mm nuts. Next step is to fill up the reservoir to the max level. So it's in, and the master cylinder has fixed the issue. The only thing left to do now is bleed the rest of the ABS system. But since I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to flush the system with new fluid, I figured I'd save that for a separate video. So thank you for sticking with me, guys. Till next time, Enjoy the wrench time. Okay, a couple more, then hold it. Leave spilling all over the place and everything. So I'm gonna attempt to get interrupted by a twin engine Cessna.